curriculum. This webinar is part of the Generator School Network's professional development offerings on the K-12 Service Learning Standards for Quality Practice. Thanks for coming today. My name is Karen Pernew. I'm the Director of Program Strategies at the National Youth Leadership Council, and I'll be facilitating today's session. Elizabeth Koenig is providing our tech support this afternoon. She'll be responding to your questions online and providing resources as we talk through some of the available materials on linking service learning with the curriculum. NYLC's Generator School Network online service learning community is a place where educators learn, plan, and connect. You can find professional development resources, service learning self-assessment tools, and curricular resources here. You can plan and share your service learning projects, and you can connect with your service learning peers in your own school district, your community, or across the nation, so you can talk with others who have the same interests as you. As we just mentioned, this webinar is part of the Professional Development Series for the Generator School Network. So first we'd like to see how many of you are already part of the GSN online community. This webinar is open to everyone, so it's not necessary that you be a member, but we just wanted to gauge this audience's familiarity with the resource and give you an opportunity to get used to using some of the interactive tools that we have available here. So, if you are a member of the GSN, could you click the green check mark under the participant list over on the left of your screen? So click the green check mark for yes, the red X for no. Great. It looks like most of us here are members of the GSN. I just wanted to say again, membership in the online community is free, and you can join if you're interested at all in using or improving service learning. Go to gsn.nylc.org and follow a few simple prompts if you want to join. I just wanted to start out with a little overview of today's session. We're going to do some warm-up activities. We're going to do a little introduction to the K-12 Service Learning Standards for Quality Practice. We will explore some of the resources on LIFT, Raising the Bar for Service Learning, a multimedia tool that we use here at NYLC for professional development. And we'll be looking at some practical resources on linking service with the school curriculum or your after-school curriculum if you're from a different kind of program. So first, we wanted to get a sense of those of us who are in the room, and I just have a few poll questions here for you. Underneath the participant list, you'll see some letters. If you could just click on the letter that corresponds to your answer to this question, what ages do you work with? That would be great. So it looks like we have a broad range. Nobody from higher education represented here. A couple from middle school, and some of us who work with everybody, high school or elementary school. So it looks like a pretty broad range. And then just so we know, what best describes your role in service learning? We work largely with K-12 educators, so that's where many of my examples will come from. But if there are others in the audience, we can try to expand a bit to include some of your work contexts as well. So it looks like we have some nonprofit organization staff, somebody who is a classroom teacher, and somebody who works in another capacity within a school. Great. And then finally, I'd love to get a sense of where you're located. This is something that we like to do in all of our webinars. To do this, grab the wand tool. It's located between the map and the list of participants, right underneath the blue solid square. And you can use that tool to place a symbol on the map where you're located. For example, I am in St. Paul, Minnesota, so I will put a little star there. And so please do the same. If you're participating from outside the United States or Hawaii or Alaska, you can add text to the side of the image to let us know where you are. Click on the letter A in Tools and you can type around there. It looks like even though we're a fairly small group, we're pretty diverse in where we are. Some from the East Coast, Midwest. Great, thank you. And to set the stage for the session, I just wanted to reflect a little bit about what questions you have about how to link service learning projects with the academic curriculum or your programmatic curriculum that you're doing. If you have some questions that you would really like to see addressed, or if there are just things that have been on your mind, if you want to type in the text box here, we can try to work and incorporate them into the discussion. Great, we've got a couple of questions here. Somebody wants to know how to incorporate youth voice into the curriculum, and that's something that we can definitely talk about. And how to incorporate social development into the curriculum with service learning standards. That's a really good question too. And how to connect with state standards. We'll talk quite a bit about that one. I'm just going to make a note here. One other quick question before we get started with more of the content of this webinar. I just want to gauge how familiar people here are with the K-12 Service Learning Standards for Quality Practice. If you could respond by clicking the appropriate letter here, that would be terrific. Good. It looks like people are pretty familiar and quite comfortable with working with the standards. I just want to give you a little bit of an overview of the standards. NYLC led a broad-based coalition of the service learning field to develop the K-12 Service Learning Standards for Quality Practice. Together with our research partner, RMC Research, NYLC published the standards in 2008, and they've been growing in acceptance since then. Many state governments have adopted them, the federal government, some education groups in Canada, the Peace Corps internationally, Australia. And so they've gained a lot of credence in the field. They were developed using the same evidence-based method that other disciplines have used to develop standards. And we engaged a broad range of stakeholders, including education researchers, teachers, administrators, community partners, and students in developing these standards. All had a role in crafting the language of the standards after we did the literature reviews and came up with the basic framework for them. The language was carefully crafted in a series of reactor panels across the country. There are 8 core standards supported by 35 indicators: meaningful service, linked to curriculum, reflection, diversity, youth voice, partnerships, progress monitoring, duration and intensity. And today, as you know, we're focusing on the link to the curriculum standard. This standard says that service learning is intentionally used as an instructional strategy to meet learning goals or content standards. These are usually academic content standards, but they can also be some of the other kinds of standards that many schools and programs meet. For example, an after-school program might be working on social development skills or entrepreneurial skills that don't directly correlate to a school curriculum. But within the context of those programs, you can use those as the basis for the learning that you do with the young people that you work with. The Link to Curriculum standard has 4 indicators that go along with it. And these are having clearly articulated learning goals, whether those are your classroom goals or your program goals. High-quality service learning involves projects that align with academic or programmatic curriculum. So it goes along with a predetermined set of what you want to accomplish, not just the learning goals, but those overarching pieces. High-quality service learning helps students transfer the knowledge and skills that they developed during their service learning experience so that they're able to use it in a variety of contexts, not just within the service learning experience that they went through within the course, and not just being able to use the academic content within the classroom, but being able to see how it's used in the real world. And finally, one of the other indicators for the link to curriculum is that it's formally recognized within the program. Whether it's formally recognized by the school board policies and student records or some other kind of system, we think this formal recognition adds a sense of the importance that the link to curriculum has, and really underscores and undergirds the learning that takes place for students. There's a lot of research behind the standards, and the research around the link to curriculum is probably some of the strongest of any of the 8 standards, perhaps because it's one of the easier standards to measure this along with duration and intensity. It's something that researchers look at regularly, particularly education researchers, and it makes sense. Students learn the best when their learning is intentional, so having those clear and deliberate links to the academic content and related character and civic education goals really strengthens the learning outcomes for students. I just wanted to highlight three studies here. In a study by Billig, Root, and Jesse of RMC Research in 2005, they found that using service learning to teach content standards or curricular objectives was among the strongest predictors of all academic outcomes. In a study of CalServe, evaluators found that academic impacts were related to the clarity of the academic goals and activities and the support through focused reflection. Kraft and Wheeler in 2003 found that alternative school students who participated in service learning that had strong connections to the curriculum demonstrated significant increases over time in the motivation to learn, writing scores on a 6th straight writing assessment, and in their grade point averages. These academic outcomes are some of the most important things for the service learning field, in part because the justification for using service learning within a traditional K-12 school really has to show that the academic outcomes are a piece of the service learning, and that helps justify it happening within the school day. So these are some of the most important studies, or the ones that get looked at the most by the Department of Education and other school districts and other researchers in that way. I wanted to shift a little bit now from talking about the standards to talking about the lift, raising the bar to service learning practice. This is one of the newer professional development tools that we've developed here at NYLC. And the idea behind it is that just seeing or hearing the description of the standards and indicators doesn't always paint a good picture of how you can build your own service learning efforts. And so for today's session, we're going to use some resources available through this multimedia tool. And this is a screenshot of what you'll see. LIFT is designed to foster online and on-site professional learning communities by providing videos and downloadable resources to support and improve your project. You can use a wide range of video clips profiling schools and including student and teacher interviews, and then jump online to discuss with your peers what you saw. You can get grounded in the research that supports each of the 8 standards and access PDFs of implementation tools and project examples that you can use. We put this resource together interviewing service learning experts from across the country. An elementary school in Philadelphia, a middle school in the New Orleans area, and a high school in St. Paul, Minnesota. So it tries to capture a variety of geographic experiences and age groups. So we wanted to get started with this by watching 2 short video clips in the Think About It, Talk About It section of the link to the curriculum. Each of these clips will be about a minute long. The videos might take longer or shorter to load and complete for some of you, depending on your download speeds. So if I could ask you to click on the green checkbox to the left once you've had an opportunity to watch the short video clip, we'll know when everyone is finished. Once your video is finished, take a look at the questions on the screen below the video and reflect on how you might answer them. When we're done with the video, we'll come back and share some of our answers with each other in the text box. So Elizabeth will be sending you that link now. Has everybody had a chance to view it? I noticed there's a few checkbox marks missing yet, but maybe we'll come back together in any case. One of the things I like about this video clip is that Cheryl Wolf, the teacher in it, is talking a little bit about some of the other kinds of standards that her young students are meeting. And this might give you some ideas. Somebody had asked earlier about incorporating social development curriculum into service learning projects. In this case, they looked at some of those fine motor skill curricular goals that they have and talked about how they could incorporate that into a service learning project. And I think that, for me, they give some sense of the social development pieces and goals that very young children and often older students have for development, and thinking about ways that they can be incorporated into a service learning project by their interactions with other people and the community members. If we could take just a little bit of time to look at the questions following this video and maybe jot some of your ideas and your responses to some of these questions in the text box, that would be helpful. What kinds of activities might you see elementary school students doing with senior citizens to meet academic goals, or some of the social development curriculum goals that some of you might have? Any thoughts? Or should we just move on to the next video clip here? Elizabeth is going to be sending you another short one. This one also is about a minute long. Great. One of the things I like about this clip is it shows some of the interdisciplinary ways that service learning projects can involve not just the core subject area that you're working, but some of the other standards that teachers need to make. They can be, as you all know, wonderful opportunities for getting some of those cross-disciplinary kinds of activities in a service learning experience. And in this case, Barry Guillot from Louisiana talked about how he was able to integrate math into a science, and to do so in a real hands-on way that brought that math alive for the students, creating these grids, sitting out on the actual land that they were doing this process on, helped them transfer that skill and make them see how it fits into a variety of different contexts. Does anybody have any thoughts or answers to some of these questions that you'd like to share? You can type into the text box there. What are ways you can imagine working with colleagues to introduce additional disciplines into a service learning experience? Nice. Terry writes that working with art, music, and physical education to enhance development of multiple intelligence, the choice of project, and ESL to improve access for English language learning students. That's a really good example. So, I just wanted to talk a little bit about how the LIFT is organized here. And there's two sections under each of the standards. The Think About It, Talk About It, which we were just in, has a series of video clips and some reflection questions for discussion prompts after it. And then there is another section called Explore, where there are a number of other kinds of resources, including some of the downloadable PDFs and handouts that we have. So just to give you a little tour of the LIFT here. I wanted to talk with you a little bit about some of the starting points for linking the curriculum to service learning. One of the common places where people start is responding to the needs of a community partner. For example, this might look like one teacher that we worked with had a relationship with an organization called Play Pumps International. This organization helps villages build wells in sub-Saharan Africa. They have an innovative tool that combines playground equipment with a pump so that they can build wells in local community schoolyards, and students can play on this playground equipment, which will then pump the water, so the girls no longer have to spend much of the day gathering water from great distances and can spend more time in school. The teacher's friend had asked her if that would be an issue her students might be interested in, and they were, and so the class created a garage sale to raise money to build a well in a village in Africa. One of the advantages of responding to the needs of a community partner or a community need in your neighborhood is that the partners can communicate the genuine need behind the request. So you know that you're doing something that's going to be meaningful to the recipients of that service. But one of the challenges, particularly when it comes to linked curriculum, is that the learning objectives that such service projects might meet might not match your desired curriculum sequence or the content that you need to cover in your classroom. For the teacher who did the garage sale to build a play pump in Africa, the starting point that they did was, okay, how can we meet this need? And then how can I maybe connect this to some of the curriculum things that we're doing? And she shared with me that she had a little bit of difficulty with that. She felt that they were very successful in the project in having students learn organizational skills and some of the financial skills and economic skills that she wanted to teach. But because it wasn't directly driven from her curriculum, they did a better job of meeting the students' engagement, getting some of that youth voice, and meeting the service goals of their projects. Another common service learning starting point is letting students' questions and interests suggest a project that you might want to do. And this can be another highly effective way of doing a service learning project. Another example for this, students at the High School for the Recording Arts in St. Paul, Minnesota became very interested in helping out after the earthquake in Haiti. Their school principal was from that island nation, and they felt a special connection, and they really wanted to do something. So they connected that desire to help with their specialized curriculum that they have at this high school to get a whole group in class together to write a song and produce a music video that would raise awareness and raise money to go to a reputable charity that distributed water to those affected by the quake. A very strong part of this school's curriculum deals with music and music production. So not just the performance side of music, but the technology behind it and the music recording. So they were able to connect the students' interest with their specialized curriculum pretty easily and bring them through from start to finish. And they did a fantastic job of with this video and had Apple accepted on iTunes for download with the proceeds going to Haiti. So it was a real successful project in a lot of ways. It met some of the advantages. Students became more engaged in learning because their concerns and interests helped drive the curriculum. Not only were they engaged in the topic of Haiti, they were engaged in the kinds of activities that they were doing because they chose this particular kind of school to go to. But the disadvantages of selecting service learning projects this way, or always doing so, is that the topic students suggest might not fit in with your desired curriculum sequence again, or the content that you need to cover in your classroom. And so you might end up making some extra work for yourself and spending some extra time learning what you need to do in order to guide them into the areas that their interests are taking them. Another real common entry point for connecting to the curriculum is really starting with your existing units of study, what you're already doing in your program, what you're already doing in your classroom. The advantages of this kind of approach are that you're using familiar materials and adding to your repertoire of teaching strategies that you're using. You know that it's something that you plan on covering anyway. And you might find it easier to differentiate learning and reach students in new ways when you're not creating something new. An example of this, a teacher in Guilford County Schools in North Carolina expanded an existing nutrition unit that she developed. She expanded it to include a service component that would help drive student interest in the topic rather than simply going through the elements of good nutrition and the importance of exercise. She expanded it to have students analyze the nutritional content of food served in their school. Students used what they learned to help make school food choices more varied and healthful in their school and make recommendations to the school board. So she was able to work with a whole class project, use the outlines of what she'd done traditionally with her nutrition unit, but expand it by adding the service component and differentiating the kinds of things that students were doing in the activities so that she was able to give students some activities that played to their strengths, some that were more developmental and would help them learn new skills. And one of the things that she had a few challenges with was figuring out how to assess student learning in those cases because she had to develop all new assessments to go along with it. But it's a really good way to enter it from the curriculum side. And one of the other ways is to really start with the academic standards themselves that your class must meet. Most schools, most programs these days exist around specific goals and standards. And this is the method that NYLC is recommending more and more often to classroom teachers who use service learning as an instructional method. Part of the problem with service learning, we think, and why it has experienced mixed results in terms of learning outcomes for students, is that when teacher planning focuses only on project details or when they mold the academic goals to the details of a specific community project, the academic results might be limited for students. The students learn from service learning, absolutely, but their learning might be highly contextualized and concrete, limited to the details of a specific problem, project, or community. For example, one teacher that we've worked with talked about bringing students out to work on Habitat for Humanity projects and doing some construction activities out there. And she tried to link it to her math curriculum that she did in the upper elementary school. And what she found with that is that while the students were using math to do the construction activities, the math that they were doing was something that they weren't able to bring into a wide variety of contexts, in terms of cutting and how you set the angle of the saw. She thought she was teaching angles and measurement in that way, and it worked to a certain extent, but the learning itself ended up being highly contextualized and not as effective when students tried to transfer that to paper and pencil tests. So starting with the standards and figuring out how to teach those in a variety of ways can be a really effective way of doing it. And this gets to one of the other earlier questions that you asked. Sometimes the required standards might not be as relevant to student interests, and some of the standards might be difficult to match to a particular service. And the way that we've been approaching that question here at NYLC is really trying to bring youth voice in in different ways within the classroom. You know, all of our programs, all of the work that we do with young people has parameters to it, has structures that we need to work within. And I think that finding ways to be creative within those structures, to give students choices and voices in the kinds of activities that they play, the roles that they're going to play within the service learning project, not giving them choices in everything or letting them design and drive an entire project, but telling them what the parameters are and having them help you guide how your service learning project can meet those academic goals can be a really effective way of putting students in charge of their own learning. We've been doing some experimenting with this, particularly in Guilford County schools this year, and we're doing some evaluation on this method of incorporating student voice, and we hope to be able to present some of those results in the next year. Does anybody have any questions so far? Please feel free to just type them in the text box, and I can address them as they come up. But I wanted to move on a little bit and present some other resources that you can use when looking at how to tie your service learning experiences with young people to specific programmatic and curriculum goals. Elizabeth is going to send over a PDF now that you can download to your computer, and we'll walk you through this document a little bit as well. You'll get a message box that pops up on your desktop asking if you want to save this. If you click yes, it'll directly download the document to your desktop. I have a screenshot up of that document right now, but there's a lot of small text that you won't be able to read on the screen, so it might be easier if you're able to view it and enlarge the actual document. So I'm just saving this for myself here. And what this is something that was created by Florida Learn and Serve with some of their partners. And it uses specifically the Florida Sunshine State standards to link those standards to various aspects of a service learning project. If you take a look at the top of the document here, it goes through the service learning cycle. And over here in the subject line, it talks about the various standards that teachers in Florida have to meet with their students. And what this document does, it goes through several different subject areas: math and science, the arts like dance, music, theater, visual arts, applied technology, health and physical education, and language arts and foreign language, and some of the Goals-Free standards, which are some of the broader standards like 21st century skills, organizational skills, critical thinking skills that students in Florida have to meet. And it really looks at the different stages of a service learning project and how those particular standards might be able to fit into those areas of a service learning project. How many of you are familiar with the service learning cycle? Raise your hand or click the green check mark if you're familiar with it. Good. It looks like most of you are familiar with that. You know, the IPARD-C model takes students through the investigation, the planning and preparation, the action, demonstration, reflection stages of a service learning project. Somebody asked me to repeat the question, and I was just asking about familiarity with the service learning cycle. So this is a handy resource that I won't go through in depth, but I would really encourage you to take a look at it because I think it gives some really good ideas about how to link specific kinds of activities that your young people will be doing with specific curricular goals. This document comes from this other document called 4 Practical Resources. It's available online if you just Google Florida Learn and Serve and 4 Practical Resources. And this is a really comprehensive booklet that is all downloadable, and it goes through the Florida State Standards, standard by standard, and connects it with service learning project ideas that can go along with each of those standards. Even though your own classroom standards or your own program standards might be different from the Florida State Standards, it can be a good source for generating ideas about how you can connect specific standards and specific grade levels to something your students might be able to accomplish. And so I really recommend looking at this resource at your own time. I'm sorry, I wanted to highlight a few more resources from NYLC's LIFT pieces that explore the link to curriculum. If you go to the link to curriculum standard on LIFT and go to Explore, you'll find some downloadable PDFs. And I just wanted to talk about some of these and what you might find there. This resource called Meeting Educational Standards for through Service Learning goes through some of those common entry points that I mentioned earlier and talks about the advantages and disadvantages of each of those. And the flip side of this also includes a handy chart for looking at ideas for service and organizing how it fits some of your standards that you have in the classroom. Another downloadable resource available on LIFT is Predicting Evidence of Learning. One of the things that we recommend is really systematically sitting down and writing out your learning goals that go along with a service learning project. So looking at your learning goals, looking at your service goals, because you're going to have some goals for students that really address the service outcomes that you want to achieve with a project, and looking at the academic standards and benchmarks related to those goals. These will help you identify some of those. We have just a couple more slides with some reminders about upcoming opportunities, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to ask questions if you have any now. So if you have any questions, please just type them into the chat box here. It looks like nobody's typing right now, so I just wanted to do a short reflection before we close out. As in any service learning experience, we like to reflect on what we've learned, and I just ask you to share with us what is one thing that you're taking away from this session. What sparked new ideas or connections for you here? If you could type something into the chat box, I'd appreciate it. Or use the tool and type on the balloons on the takeaway. Great, thanks. I just wanted to remind you of some upcoming webinars. Every Thursday for the next 3 weeks, we have another webinar presented through the Generator School Network. One on progress monitoring next Thursday, July 28th. Duration and intensity, August 4th. And getting started in the GSN if you'd like to learn more about the resources available in this online community. That will be August 11th from 3 p.m. Central Time. And to register for any of these, you can go to www.nylc.org/store. And thank you. Thank you all for coming. And please feel free to email us or call if you have any additional questions. The GSN hotline is here. The general GSN email is here. And you can also please feel free to email me directly. I'm at cprenue@nylc.org. I just typed that into the chat box if anyone would like to have that. Thanks for joining us on this webinar, and we hope to see you soon. If you'd like to join the GSN, if you're not already a member, please feel free to go here to gsn.nylc.org/users/new and make yourself available with the resources there. Thank you so much.